Today's webinar is on the IPedge app server and how you can add unified communications to an existing Strata CIX, so using the app server. So just a couple of things just before we get started. I'm going to leave you all on mute. So if you do have anything you need to ask, whatever, there is a chat box. You can raise your hand as well. If I can just ask, you should all have the screen in front of you. If anyone has any problems, can you just raise your hand just to indicate that you're either not hearing me or you're not seeing the screen? Well, obviously, if you're not hearing me, you wouldn't have heard me say that in the first place. So I'm going to start off then, as I haven't got anything from anybody. So let's get into the IPedge app server. What is it? Well, first of all, it's a unified communications product that can add all that functionality to an existing Strata CIX. It can offer call manager, so we're talking about CTI from the desktop, click to dial and so on, plus a bit more sophistication on that, with presence, instant messaging, collaboration, and personal call routing. It can add messaging to the product, so that could be seen as just a WAV file dropped as email, but it can do an awful lot more than that. It can also do fax. It can take a fax and deliver it as a PDF or a TIFF, and it can also manage on an individual extension. It can manage an auto attend with find me, follow me functionality. It can hunt through numbers and things like that. So from the messaging perspective, it can be a very, very sophisticated solution platform, even just for messaging. And then the last part there with IPedge Meeting is it can be a 24-party conference bridge, but it can also offer web and video collaboration as well. A bit like the presentation I'm doing now, it can provide that sort of functionality. Some people have asked, obviously, why am I presenting on that bridge rather than using GoToMeeting? GoToMeeting that I'm using now is very well set up for training purposes. It's not particularly cost effective, but the way it manages, sends out reminders and so on, it's a very, very dedicated, managed way of being able to deliver that, and you pay a premium price for that. And what we'll find is that Meeting fits in to more of an ad hoc based business that needs a more cost effective solution that's scalable to everybody rather than a dedicated one for a particular person. So you'll see that as a move on to that as well. So the last thing really that the app server offers is it offers customers a migration strategy as well. They're taking unified comms today. One of the things on another presentation I do talks about unified comms and don't overinvest, don't spend more than you need to, buy what you need to do today's business and buy tomorrow's sort of functionality tomorrow. The reason for that is there's so much changing in the marketplace and so on. What the app server can deliver is a voice migration strategy, because you can stick it on the side of a CIX now, use the apps and functionality to support what the customer needs today. But if they want to go all IP, they put SIP trunks in, they can migrate everything across to the IPedge and then eliminate the CIX, and they've got a migration strategy. So another way of looking at it is what they're investing today to provide their unified comms bit could be their voice platform for the future. And either you put a gateway in or you keep the Strata CIX in place with the analog or ISDN lines coming through. That could be the gateway into the IPedge, and at a later date you then chop the CIX out and you then move into IP trunks, and the CIX does, the IPedge does everything. So that's another way of looking at it as a migration strategy. Whether you pitch that to the customer on day one, or whether you keep that in your pocket because you know that you've got the customer available to you now for the next 7 to 10 years. When the customer then says, I'm looking at moving to an all IP system, you just go, well, that's all right. I can do that with your existing system. It's just a license and a low-cost add-on rather than a complete rip and replace. The reason for labouring those last few points are really around some of the challenges in selling at the moment. What an FD/MD needs to see is they need to see a low-risk solution. And that's really what the app server offers. Yes, they could do rip and replace. Yes, they could put another product in that provides some of that functionality. That would be a complete change of a system, a complete change of working practices. The phone's working a different way. Everyone needs to be retrained. All of that adds business risk to the customer. So although there may be better options, in some cases it may be better price to maybe do a rip and replace. What you're not costing in on the basic price is the cost to business of the upheaval of that change, the retraining of that, and what might get lost business-wise while all of that is happening. Also, the low-cost reduced investment, because the challenge for a lot of FDs at the moment is justifying how unified comms is effectively going to pay for itself. And if I then go for a complete new system with a full UC suite and so on, the costs have gone up. It's harder to justify the ROI. It's potentially harder to get that through the board, get it signed off. Whereas adding an app server and expanding the functionality of the existing product can be a very, very cost-effective, low-risk way of getting the additional functionality. And as a salesperson, from moving the sale forward, getting an app server in there, and then opening it up at a later date. Because as the last point says, it's future-proof. They can turn voice on a later date. You can either sell that on day one, or you can hold that in your back pocket, and on day, year 4 or whatever, when they say, oh, we now want an all IP system, well, you've already got one. Let's just turn voice on. So they're really the sales arguments around, or how I certainly would pitch it to an existing customer. Let's have a look at the functionality and what the product can actually do for our customers. The first thing it does with Call Manager is it offers you a standard, or there is an advanced version of Call Manager. So the image at the top there, where it says X3720 demo mode, that is standard Call Manager working. So you can see there you've got basic call control functionality at the top there. You get your CTI coming through. It'll pop up, the number that's calling in and so on, and it will look in your Outlook local client data, and it'll pop that information. And it has 9 buttons there that are pre-programmed to expand the functionality of the existing handset they've got. When I say you can program them for what you need. They're programmable feature keys that can extend the functionality of the phone system. You can also do things like click to dial from your Outlook contacts, and in fact you can click to dial from any Windows-based application, because it'll do sort of clipboard dialing. Just highlight a number, copy it, and then hit a function key, and it'll dial that number. So it's a productivity tool in its own right. We say there it's included as no charge, because with the endpoints, we've got a bundle with the endpoints and Call Manager that effectively makes it a standard price at £70 an endpoint for an IP handset, and you get that standard version. The enhanced version, or the advanced version, adds a lot of additional feature sets, and really that's on this next slide here, where you start to be able to do a lot more functionality. So it does the standard things, standard click to dial and so on, but we start expanding it with things like Personal Call Handler. Personal Call Handler will allow you to manage what happens when a call comes in. So if this DDI rings, pop this database. If that DDI rings, pop this HTML file in the web browser. If this particular number rings, forward it to my mobile. Yeah, if my Outlook diary has this event in it, do this. You can do all of that sort of stuff from the Personal Call Handler. Very, very functional around turning feature sets, turning call forwards on, off, and so on and so forth. We've got, obviously, Outlook calendar integration, everything in both of them anyway. In the enhanced version, you've got the ability to look at logs of inbound, outbound calls, so all that functionality. You can start searching through by name, number, date, time. So if you did get a call a couple of days ago, it holds on a very active user at least a week's worth of calls. On a less active user, you need to act, potentially a month or two's worth of calls. So if there was somebody who called you X amount of time, days ago, you better go backwards and search, find the CLI, and bring that person back. You've got the ability to do chat. Now, chat's coming into a lot of companies now. In fact, I read a report the other day that said IM is being used more now in business than email is. But a lot of small businesses don't have the ability to add IM to their business at the moment. You get that with Call Manager. So by deploying Call Manager, they're also deploying a communication system in the company using chat. And then that can be expanded because it opens up the whiteboard and so on afterwards. Presence as well. Actually seeing presence on the PC of who in the office is available for a call. We've got BLF on the phone, but it's extended obviously through this application. And presence combined with IM is a very, very valuable application. We know that from social with likes of Facebook and so on. In business and small business, it's not something that necessarily everybody has at the moment, and they'll value that a lot if they're given the opportunity to it. And the final thing listed on that slide, the soft phone, and you can see it on the right-hand side. I'll come to it in a minute, but you've got the ability to have a VoIP plug-in on it. So for a remote user, VPN back to the office, you've got a full feature phone function built into Call Manager as well. Key things as far as using it's concerned, yes, you've got the click to do, click to dial, click to this, click to that type stuff. But for a lot of users, though, if they've got keyboards, they'll want to have keyboard functionality. And as you can see, you can assign all the standard functions you need to do with a handset. You can assign it to a function key on the system. And it could just be a straightforward function key press. It could be a Control Alt Shift, whatever you want to do to hit that function key to actually trigger that. So that's all pre-programmed. People can set it up to whatever suits their working practices. The standard contacts window gives them visibility of everybody in the organization. It gives you nice presence status of them, and it will also show any status messages that you might have pre-programmed saying what they're doing or where they've gone for a week, or something along those lines, just so that you've got that visibility of they're not around and they're not likely to be around. And also whether they've got their chat turned on or not, so you can actually initiate a chat with them. Very, very valuable for a small business. At the moment, it's single site, but the app server will be opened up with what's called XMPP. If you've been on another one of my presentations, you'll know a bit more about that, but it's to do with federation. And you'll be able to have 2 IP edges with no connection other than a network between them. They will use XMPP to federate the presence, and you'll be able to see whether people are on the phone or chat and so on using the XMPP connection in around, we're hoping to beta it in about 3 to 4 months. And that initially will be internal, and XMPP will then be opened up external, probably later on this year or very early next, as open federation becomes more and more prevalent in the industry. So what we're doing here is enabling that functionality, though, in a small business, with the app server being that functionality. We have a dialer facility. As we've already said, we can dial out. We've got that call handler for doing the various bits and pieces. What the dialer does is that it extends that functionality by saying, I'm a salesperson. I just made a call to a customer. They've said they can't take a call today. Can I call them back Friday? Well, just go into this, schedule a call for Friday, put a time in there, and at that time on Friday, it will pop up saying you've got a timed call to this customer, and you just hit dial and it'll dial that number for you. So it gives you that ability to manage your diary, again, using Call Manager to do the interface for you. You've got the ability to program buttons on it, and you can do a number of buttons. I think the total you can do is 560 odd. But the more buttons page just simply here shows you obviously what you can do. You can almost put anything under a button there. So DSS without message or with message waiting, depending on what you want to do. So one way of setting this up is if you're administrator looking after maybe 20, 30 salespeople, you could have all their DSS buttons with message waiting lights on them, and you can see who's got a message and who hasn't. And if you've set it up in the way that allows you access to their mailboxes, you can go in, pick up their messages. If you can deal with it, you can clear the message box. If you can't and they need the message, then you can leave it in there. So there's an example of using phantom message waiting lights on Call Manager. I think we've got a school, for example, that has every teacher's got a mailbox, and they've got their mailbox name and whether they've got a message waiting next to it. And that's how they see whether they've got messages. It can be used in so many different ways. You can also use it as a productivity tool for an individual user, because you can do launching applications from it. You can do web pages. It'll launch a browser and jump to a web page. So anything you do regularly can be programmed in, and effectively Call Manager becomes that productivity tool for the user on the desktop. The other thing, as I already highlighted earlier on, was it can be a phone as well. It actually emulates a 10-button soft phone, as you can see there. So you've got the 10 buttons there, and you've got the dial next to it. Obviously, if you were dialing out, you can just click to dial or clipboard dial or cut something off a web page, but you can just punch the numbers in by a mouse or use the keyboard as well if you wish. So it gives a user, complete phone functionality as well from a PC, mobile, as long as they've got a network connection back to the office using a VPN, which they'll do for picking up mail and whatever. They've got a voice platform built in there as well. And we've got some specific hooks for Jabra headsets to make them more functional with the product as well. The chat and whiteboarding, already highlighted earlier on, a lot of people would use IM rather than potentially sending an email or actually phoning people up. So having an IM service within a business is key anyway. The ability then to open it up as a whiteboard, and in the example here in the bottom right hand corner there, someone's loaded a graphic up and pointed to it. It could be a photograph of some damage of some goods that just shipped in. Yeah, all sorts of things could be used to push documents between each other. You could actually push Office documents between each other as well on it. So it's a useful tool to do that. You can also, as the top diagram on the right-hand side shows, you can actually pre-program buttons as well with specific responses. So if you are on the phone and a chat comes in, you can hit sorry, I'm on the phone at the moment, I'll come back to you in a minute. So you can have that type of pre-programming just to throw a quick message out as well. And the last thing it has is it does have a web browser built into it, so it can actually pop things into the web browser. Now, why would you want to do that, some people would say? Well, what you might want to do, for example, is if you were in an office which was a shared office and there were multiple businesses, what you can do is you can actually put an HTML file on the PC, and when a call comes through from a specific DDI, it will pop that HTML file. So it could be a script file, as you can see on the left-hand diagram there, where the administrator is given a particular script to say when that DDI rings. And there can also be perhaps telephone numbers of, well, you might be better ringing his mobile, here it is. And all of that can be driven via HTML files that are programmed to pop into that browser page when certain actions happen. So that's a very, very useful way of using it. It could be that it pops to an HTML page that answers questions. So can I just ask you, a few questions now we've finished this call, just to see how well we did. Ask 5 questions, click the boxes, hit save, and we've now held some information there that can be assimilated elsewhere. So the web browser can be used as a very, very useful way of anything that's in HTML, it can pop into that window. And that's really an overview of Call Manager. And there's a lot of feature and functionality sets there. It's not just clicking to dial from the desktop. It's a true productivity tool for a user. And they can integrate it in any way they wish, obviously into their business. But it's bringing presence, it's bringing click to dial, it's bringing call handling with call forwards and so on. It's bringing a lot more than just saying, effectively it's click to dial off the desktop. Next part of it is IPedge messaging, and this is bringing unified messaging to a CIX. And so very, very simply, what is unified messaging? I think most of us have come across that at some point over the last 3 to 5 years. It's becoming more prevalent in business now, where people want a voicemail message actually delivered as an email into my inbox. Because I use a PC at the same time as a phone, give me the choice as to where I pick it up. Particularly as we're now using smartphones a lot more, and certainly mobile users, if I'm out of the office, I may well be picking it up on a smartphone. It's the ability to just play it back as a WAV file, and I've heard it, and I can address it while I'm out, rather than having to go back into the office and pick up my voicemail message. So once the message is recorded in the mailbox, an email is generated, and off it goes as an attachment, as a WAV file. We can do the same with faxes, and there's still, in certain areas, there's still quite a bit of fax that is used. So again, the ability for the system to take a fax, convert it either to a TIFF or a PDF, and deliver that into the inbox as well, can be very, very useful to businesses. The email notification can go 2 ways on this. One is a notification could come out saying you have a voicemail, click here to listen to it, or it can be attached as a WAV file. It depends on what the user wants. But I think with most data connections on mobiles now being sort of fairly loose, as in they're at least a gig, if not unlimited now, you're not overly bothered by WAV files coming through. Therefore, you would have them there all the time as an attachment. And you can see in the image on the bottom there, there's a phone call coming from my mobile, and I've got a missed call from the system telling me that, I rang myself. A bit bizarre, but there you go. And then I leave a message, and I've got a voicemail message behind it that I can just click on and listen to. So that's the core functionality. However, there's an awful lot more that goes with it. The first thing is since 1.5 something or other, around August, September last year, we launched IP Mobility. I'm not going to go into massive detail on IP Mobility because I've got another presentation coming up on Thursday and Friday, which will spend around 30 minutes purely on IP Mobility, and I'll throw it up on the screen and let you see what you can do and so on. But just very, very simplistically now, with each endpoint, you get a license for IP Mobility. And what IP Mobility does is it's an app that sits on a smartphone, and it can do some fairly clever things. First of all, when you get voicemail in the office, the smartphone will pick that up over the data connection, and it'll just pop a message saying, like you get one now saying you've got an email, it will say you've got a voicemail message. The screenshot on the furthest right there is the visual voicemail screenshot, and you can just about make out a mobile number. And I think there's a number of you that work with Brett there, and you see that's Brett's mobile number. So Brett left me a mobile message then. I've clicked on this, and I can actually return the call through the application. I can delete the voicemail, I can save the voicemail, so it's available permanently to me. I can forward it on to someone else, or I can play it on my earpiece. If I clicked it just one press rather than two, it would have just played it on the speaker on the back of the phone. So effectively, what I've got is I've got a way of listening to my voicemail messages on my smartphone without having to have email and push to email and all that. For a lot of businesses, that could be a very, very easy way for them to manage their voicemail messages. Even more important than that, a lot of the time it's about managing your greeting. You're out the office today, how do you change your greeting? Well, you phone in, you hit your PIN code. Yeah, there's a bit of a palaver for people. Often they don't bother. Well, again, on the app, this screenshot on the left-hand side of the three shows you record your greeting screen. And all you do is you hit the record button, talk to your smartphone, hit save, and it'll upload that over the 3G network, and your greeting's changed on your voicemail. How easy is that? Now, that might not seem to you or I particularly exciting, but for some examples of its use, like, for example, in the school, where teachers need to keep parents updated on a school trip, and the school trip's maybe running 30 minutes late, they need to update everyone. How do they do that? Well, they tend to have a voicemail box that says, the school trip is on time, or it can leave a message saying, it's late or so on. All you need here for a teacher to keep the parents updated is this app sitting on a smartphone, and they can be sitting on a coach. They get an idea they're running late, roughly 30 minutes, just go in here, press record, and record a new greeting. The bus is running 30 minutes late, the meet time's now 4:30 rather than 4 o'clock. Hit save, and immediately it's updated. So you're providing a very, very easy way for somebody outside of the business even to change a greeting to make it more useful for the rest of the company or the school. It's snowing today. Again, the headmaster can go into here, just hit record. The school is now closed today. And that's the is the school open, is the school closed message that we all have to monitor when we've got kids at school. So again, using it as a way of empowering the customer to do other things. You've got to think of it more as a solution platform. It's not just unified messaging as a WAV file and yeah, I've got an email with a voicemail message on it. The last thing you can do is you can dial, which is what the screen in the middle is showing. You can dial a number through it. You can look up your contacts for it. You can actually set it to pop every time you make a call on your mobile, and it will say, do you want to use IP mobility? And that functionality is the last point on the slide about call through, call back. It will actually trigger a dial from the phone system. If you're using callback, I can type a number in, hit dial. The IPedge will get the trigger request. It will then make a call out to me that I answer, and then hit a hash key, and then it will trigger a dial to the customer I wish to call. The key thing from that is I'm not picking up the minutes billing on my mobile, and I'm not giving out my CLI to the end user that I happen to be ringing. It's all going through the IPedge. So if it's call recorded and call logged, the whole thing is tracked. So if a teacher needs to ring a parent, they can be out in the middle of the sports field using their GSM data side, of the GSM connection to actually trigger the dial. The system calls them, it calls the parent. As far as the parent is concerned, the school's calling. The teacher's using their bring your own device to make that call. They're getting no minutes billing. They've got a very easy way of staying in touch with people by using, effectively, a bring your own device and a data connection. So it's a very, very clever way, again, of building solutions in around that. Other things you can do with a voicemail is it does find me, follow me. So you can set up your own, effectively, your own auto attend on your extension. You can get it to hunt through certain numbers. Again, the IP Mobility app allows you to put 3 numbers in. So again, if you're remote or suddenly I get snowed in and can't get to the office, I just put my my home number in, hit the save button, and then all calls to my desk phone will be automatically rerouted to my home phone number. The caller in doesn't see that that's happened. It all happens seamlessly. So they don't see I'm now answering the calls at home. All they know is I've answered the phone. So the find me, follow me function can be very useful. I put this to, I think it was an out of hours doctor's option where it could hunt through 3 or 4 numbers. It can either hunt through them in sequence, or it can simultaneously ring all 4, and the one on duty answers the call at the time. So it can be a very, very simple way of doing that. Caretakers within bigger schools, for example, there might be 2 or 3 of them. They might be on shift work. We just put all 3 numbers in a find me, follow me group, get them simultaneously rung, and the one who's on duty answers his phone. The other 2 either have their phones off or ignore it. So it can be a very, very useful way of routing calls through just by simply using the voicemail to do that. We can have 7 unavailable greetings, so we can actually pre-program greetings for every day of the week. We've got message forward functionalities you'd expect. We can forward messages on to somebody else. What's more key with that is the fact that we can trigger that automatically. So in other words, we could have it set so if a sales guy doesn't answer a message within 2 hours, automatically forward that message to the administrator. When the administrator answers the message, then it deletes it out of the salesperson's mailbox. That way the salesperson's not bothered by something that's already been dealt with. You don't have to go into the office going, did anyone deal with this yesterday? So what you're doing is you're moving productivity forward, but you're also making it simple and easy for everybody to work with it. We can mark a message as urgent. You can jump the queue. You can allow your customers to do that when they leave a message. We can allow a future delivery of a message. So I could record a message today and say I want it sent at 9:30 tomorrow. Why would I want to do that? One scenario, I met a customer about a couple of months ago. The MD wants to send at the end of the month, or the first working day of the following month, a message saying, let's say we've all hit targets. Fantastic, hit targets in the month. You've all done very well. Great month. But they only know that 10 o'clock at night, and then they have to wait until 9:30 in the morning when they may be in a meeting to actually send that message out. This way, the MD can sit there with their smartphone, record the greeting, send it on a time delivery for 9:30 in the morning, and everyone at 9:30 in the morning gets a personal message in their mailbox saying, thank you for last month's performance, as an example. Another one would be, for example, remote workers, or I should say a lone worker type solution. Companies make a lot of money selling lone worker solutions. You've got a lone female has to go into let's say a slightly dodgy area of the town to review a council house for sale or something. Now, maybe in the old days you'd just take the risk, or you'd send 2 people out, or so on. Future message delivery could be used here with a recording. Just go onto the smartphone, press record, time a message for an hour's time. I'm going into this particular location, this house, whatever it happens to be. If I'm not back and you get this message, then there's a problem. You send that as a time message for an hour's time. You come out, you go into future messages, and you delete the message. It never got sent. However, should you not come out at that pre-programmed time, the message will get sent. It can be paged, it can hit a paging group, it can hit a cascade message to everybody in the organization. All sorts of things could be set to trigger to bring the awareness up. What you're doing is you're protecting your staff by offering a way of managing that at-risk, potentially, activity there. Message notification can be obviously flashing on your phone. We can actually trigger a dial to a mobile phone to say you've got a voicemail message. But with unified messaging and email coming out, and a lot of people carrying email, some of that functionality now has been overtaken by the fact it's just delivered out as a unified message. And the last thing, I think I've already highlighted once already, but message cascading. Somebody doesn't respond to a message within 2 hours, let's cascade it to somebody else. Let's pass it on. Let's flash it on a number of phones. Somebody answers it, and we delete it out of everybody else's message box. Yeah, it could be a joint sales box, for example, sits on site, 5 people's sales extensions. First salesperson answers it, picks up the message, it's deleted out of the other 4 because they no longer need to worry about it. So you can manage your messaging very, very cleverly through an organization. We can do call screening. I think this is a bit obvious, but who's calling? You record your name, and then it presents that name to the user and gives you the choice of whether you want to answer the call or send it directly to voicemail. The chances are they obviously know that you're doing that, so I think it's not really customer focused, but you can do it. Paging, you can leave a greeting that says, press 1 to have me paged, and when you press 1, a page message goes out, and I can go to any phone, hit a hash key number, and I can pick that number up. So for someone mobile within the business that still wants to be able to pick a call, they can use any extension to answer that call. And as you can see there, we can also record specific announcements into the mailbox that's then paged at predetermined times. So you can use the voicemail to announce the fire alarm test every Thursday at 10 o'clock, for example, or something along those lines. So again, using the voicemail, tying it to paging can be a very, very useful solution for a business. And the last one, and one of the main things, schools are another example of where voice forms might come in, but anywhere that involves taking a list of items, voice forms can be very useful. So as an example, in the school, a lot of the time absentee line is still managed by somebody, but that really doesn't need to be if you use a voice form. The challenge is they need to make sure all the data is got. So the way you'd use a voice form on the absentee line is effectively you'd have a load of questions which says, thank you for calling absentee line. Please give me the first name of the student that's missing. And obviously you say Johnny. Please give us the surname, Smith. What form is he in? You give 7R. Why is he ill? Got a cold. When do you think he will be back? Thursday. That's recorded as a voice form, and what that means is it only records the responses from the customer, and those responses then are played back in one single message. So the administrator, when they pick up the voicemail message, will get Johnny Smith, 7R, cold, back Thursday. And that's all the information. But because it's prompting, it makes sure they get the information, rather than, oh, they didn't say when they're coming back or why the illness is. I'm going to have to phone that up. So what you're doing is, again, you're improving productivity by making sure you capture what you need. With unified messaging, that goes as a WAV file to the administrator's email, and the administrator can just listen to it on an email as well on their PC. So it just makes it very, very easy to manage functionality like that through an organization or a school. We can do direct drop to voicemail. So if the person's on the phone or we know they're not available to take a call, we can just drop it directly to their voicemail rather than ring out and then go to voicemail. Multiple mailboxes can be set up. This certainly can do a presentation of a bigger company by having, for example, the accounts department on my phone, as well as having my own personal extension mailbox on my phone. I want to give the accounts message out to my customers to appear bigger than I am, but for my personal users or interoperability with other people in the organization, I have my personal mailbox. And that way then I can present a bigger scenario to end users, but I can be personal still with key people I interact with. So you can do that multiple message mailboxing just to portray a more professional organization outwards, but also more personal inwards. And obviously all our handsets integrate with soft key integration and so on. Call record, the voicemail will manage call recording in that you can actually program a button for call record. You can program a pause button as well. So I can be in a conversation, hit the record button. It will record it obviously while I've got the after I've pressed the button. If I want to pause it, I can have a pause button programmed, so I can just stop the recording and then start it again to record the bits I want out of the message. That then will be stored in my mailbox with unified messaging. It'll be emailed to me, listen to it as a WAV file. So if I was re-recording or confirming an order that was coming through, it's a very, very easy way of doing that. Fax messaging. Once fax tone is detected on the line, it will actually convert that to a TIFF or a PDF and deliver it in my mailbox. But it can also do fax out, as the last point mentions, on demand as well. I can have directions to the organization, prospectus from the school, whatever it happens to be. I can have those documents within the voicemail and then emailed out as requested, or sorry, faxed out, I should say, as requested. So it's a very, very useful way of saving having to take phone calls asking for it. The key things to focus on here is how unified messaging works. A lot of the lower cost solutions on the market just do the first one here, which is POP3. They take a voicemail message, convert it as a WAV file, and drop into a POP account. That means there's no synchronization. It's a manual deletion functionality, and if I listen to it on my email, it still flashes as a message on my desk phone. If I listen to it on my desk phone, it's still an unlistened to message on my Outlook. If I delete it on one, it's still there on the other. So it's a bit messy to manage, particularly if I'm doing cascading and all that sort of stuff. Really what you want to do is a minimum of IMAP integration, which provides you with that synchronization. But the challenge with some organizations is IMAP can open up security risks as well. So as you get more into the lower end corporate arena, IMAP isn't seen as the best way of doing it. There'd be Active Directory managed and so on. And so MSync, the third one there, would be the way you would do that. And you'd MSync, and that's a license on the Exchange side, and it's a license you'd have to upgrade to on the IPedge. But the whole thing then is managed by MSync, which is proprietary Microsoft, which then is secure because they have it locked down. And when Active Directory changes in the office and you change your Active Directory password on your PC, then it will change it on the voicemail and match everything, and the user doesn't have to worry about the synchronization of the whole thing. So you've got full MSync functionality there, which for a low-end enterprise is exactly what they need for security. But the key thing being, I listen to it on my PC, on my smartphone, it stops the message flashing on my desk phone. When I go to my desk phone and delete, it deletes it out of my inbox on my mobile, or my PC. So it's totally integrated. So for multi-messaging, cascading, and so on, yeah, it works. Someone listens to it in the office, it's deleted out of my inbox. Very, very easy way of making the business far more productive. And the last one for the last couple of minutes is IPedge meeting. And IPedge meeting is Meet Me conferencing for IPedge. It provides some of the functionality I'm delivering here today. So our target, first of all, is small to medium businesses. businesses that don't want to pay monthly fees for a conferencing function, and by really it's a way of saying we have a conferencing bridge, we treat it like a meeting room, here's an online booking process, and you follow the process, you book the room, you have access to it. So nobody has master control of it. Anyone in the organization can go to the web page, book up a conference call, and away they go with it. Unlike the one I'm using today, for example, which is tied to me, I have the administration rights. I can't loan it to someone else very easily because everything emails back to me because it's a managed account through myself. And that's then, you know, it's very restrictive for small business, but it also means you have to pay multiple accounts, and that's where the cost comes up. So this is a shared resource in organization. It's designed to be a low-cost option, which gives the company a lot of flexibility. It provides a dial-in audio conferencing. It provides scheduling that everyone can get access to. We can record the conference, and we can get usage reports afterwards. So it ticks all those boxes for a small business. And it's web-based with the voice coming through as a, you know, PSTN dial-up or so on. Key functionality of it, it's reservation-less, so I can just start a conference call now and email a link to somebody, and they can jump in on the web and they see the same slides. So I can share my desktop. I can integrate into Outlook because everyone gets a calendar link to it that I put on the email address list, including myself, and just click and save, and it's into your Outlook. Whereas obviously the subscription ones that are out there tend to be locked purely just to your Outlook, and it makes it very hard to pass over control to somebody else to run it. And the last thing is there, we've got a conference view feature which shows myself as a moderator who's in the conference and so on. But with the latest software 1.6, a number of things have been added to that, which is personal greetings. We can offer a personal greeting into the webinar that says, like, you know, thank you for calling into the app server presentation today, and you've got a nice personal greeting at the front end of it. You can then be put into a pre-meeting lobby, and then once started, the presenter has a number of other options that weren't available for pre-1.6, things like being able to mute all or selectively mute people. So there's a lot more control functionality. You've got the ability to split people as well. So what you can do now is you can go into a web conference, and then after 10 minutes, you can actually split them out into two separate web conferences and then bring them back in again together. So the functionality in 1.6 with the Meet Me conferencing is far, far higher than it may have been before when you've seen it. Other key things, does web-based reporting, so we can pull off a web sheet afterwards, an HTML file that shows who was on it, for how long, and so on. We can record the conference as well, which comes in useful. As you may have noticed, I'm recording this conference, and I can make it available as a download later, and anyone who missed it or had to jump off and maybe missed the point can come back in and listen to it. And the last thing is the way we package the whole thing up. It's very, very flexible in it will scale from 4 to 24 ports. And that's on the audio, it'll do 4 to 24. On the recording, depends on how many conferences you're likely to do at the same time and need recording, but you license that separately. And on the last one, on the web and video, again, you can license that separately, whether video is important. If it's not, just take the web. If you want web and video, you can have both of them at the same time, and you just have to match the specs of the product that we're putting in with the functionality that the customer needs. So if it was a serious web and audio conferencing bridge, then that would probably sit on the IPedge EC far, far better than the IPedge EP, for example. So there are cut-off points where you'd move from one box to another. Last part, into the last couple of minutes. So we've now seen all the sort of functionality that we can offer with the IPedge app server. What we now need to know is, well, what do we need to connect it into an existing Strata CIX? Very simplistically, we just need to make sure that the CIX is running MT65 or higher software. We need to make sure there's a MIPU card in the system, which is on 0211 firmware or higher. And we also need to make sure that we have an IP endpoint available for every messaging channel or for every meeting channel that we need to run. And that really is, that's all you need to do on the Strata CIX. Everything else is configured obviously on the app server, and then basically it becomes licensing on the app server upwards. And that is IPedge app server. That's the overview presentation on it. I'm going to do a couple of other webinars in the next couple of weeks covering the IP mobility in more depth, because that's sort of 30-40 minutes in its own right. And I'll also go far, far deeper into the Meet Me conferencing. But I just wanted to give you an overview as part of this presentation, just so you see where it sits. So I'd like to thank you for attending this webinar. Hopefully you got out of it what you need. I will send the link out later for anyone who missed it or any of your colleagues who weren't around. And please make sure you book on some of the others to pick up the functionality of some of our other products. So thank you very much and look forward to talking to you on another webinar.